Alright, this is kind of like the halfway point. I would actually recommend that if you already watched the rest of the video before, you actually pause and work on the first IXL assignment. From here on out, we're going to be focusing on the second IXL assignment, which is right here on the screen, GD7. Here is the first example for the next section. As you might already be able to tell, what we're doing, the type of question, is very similar to the ones that we did before. In this case, we're focusing on slope for this problem. We're being asked to compare the slope of function A and the slope of function B and determine if function A's slope is greater or if it's less than the slope of function B. So let's go ahead and figure that out. Luckily, we already know how to find the slope of function A. We did that in the previous few problems. We know that the slope is the same thing as saying change of y over change of x. And in order to do that for function A, we need to first find 2 points. I'm just choosing these points because they're just the easiest for me. Let's start at the y-intercept and let's move up 1, 2, 3, 4 units. Because I moved up, it's going to be a positive 4. And let's move 1 unit to the right. Because I moved to the right, it's also a positive 1. My change of y is 4 and my change of x is 1, which becomes 4 because 4 divided by 1 is 4. To find the slope of function b, it's actually very similar, but the thinking process is a little different. It's similar in the sense that you have to choose 2 points. Here we have x and y, but they're technically just points. We have 3 options. We only need 2 of these. I'm definitely going to use this one right here, 5 and 20, because they're both positive numbers, and that's going to make the problem a lot easier. The other one doesn't matter which one you choose. I'm just going to go ahead and choose this middle one right here. So I have my 2 points. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing that we did before. We're looking for slope, which means that we're looking for the change of y over the change of x. But this time it's going to be a little bit different. When we're thinking about change of y, when we're talking about points right here, well, change just means subtract. So I'm going to be subtracting y's, and in the denominator at the bottom of my fraction, I'm going to be subtracting x's. So I went ahead and just put the subtraction symbols right there. Well, what are our y's? Our y's are right here. We have negative 20 and 20. So we're subtracting negative 20 minus 20. Here we have negative 3 and 5. So negative 3 minus 5. You could have written this the other way around. For this example, the way I wrote it down right here, I chose the top numbers first. So I went negative 20 and then minus 20. For x, I did negative 3 minus 5. But you could have flipped that around. You could have said 20 minus negative 20 and 5 minus negative 3. That would have also been correct. And let's see how our answers might be different at the end. Let's go ahead and work out the top problem first. Here we have negative 20 minus 20. Type that into your calculator or do it in your head. Here you have an answer of negative 40 divided by negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. At the bottom, here we have 20 minus negative 20, which would be a positive 40, and 5 minus negative 3, which would be a positive 8. These answers might look a little different, but they're technically the same thing, because a negative 40 divided by a negative 8 will give you a positive 5, because negative divided by negative is positive. And at the bottom, 40 divided by 8 is also 5. So they have the same answer. And the last thing that we need to ask ourselves is, which of these slopes is bigger? Function A is 4, function B is 5. So the bigger one is 5. That means that your correct answer is the second option. Function A has a smaller slope. The slope is less than function B because it's 5. Take 30 seconds and try this problem out. Similar thing, you're looking for the slope. 30 seconds starts now. That is time. Let's go ahead and review now. For this one, we're being asked to find the slope just like before, but this time instead of a graph, we have a equation. This one should actually be a little easier than the one before because for function a, we know that this is just written in y equals mx plus b. Because we're looking for slope, we know that's m, so here our slope is 3. So m is equal to 3. That's it for function a. For function b, it's going to require more work. So first, let's just choose 2 points. I'm going to choose the positives because it's going to make my answer a little easier to work with. And I'm going to choose this middle point. It just looks easier for me. Again, you could have chosen any 2 points. I just chose those 2. So next, let's go ahead and write what we know about slope, which is that it is the change of y over the change of x. And I'm going to write out my fraction. I like doing this and just filling it out at the end just because it helps me stay organized, especially with those negatives. For a change of y in the numerator, we are going to subtract the y values. So one of my y values is 4, the other y value is 13. So 4 minus 13. Same thing for change of x in the denominator, change of x, one of them is negative 1, the other x is 8. So negative 1 minus 8. And now let's just simplify. In the numerator, 4 minus 13, that gives us an answer of 9. More specifically, negative 9. And in our denominator, we have negative 1 minus 8, which is also equal to negative 9. And if we simplify this out, negative 9 divided by negative 9 is a positive 1. So for function a, we have a slope of 3. For function b, we have a slope of 1. The slope of function a is greater than the slope of function b. So this is correct. For this next example, we're going to be focusing on looking for the y-intercept for both of these functions. And same as before, we're trying to figure out if a is greater or less than function b when we're talking about the y-intercepts. The y-intercept for function a is pretty straightforward. We're just looking at where the line crosses the y-axis, and in this case, it crosses at negative 4. So our y-intercept, our b, is negative 4. For the second one, for function b, we can't just look at it and find the y-intercept like we did in the one before. There's actually a few more steps that we need to take in order to figure that out. But let's review a few things first. Because we can't just look at the table and figure out what the y-intercept is, we need to use something else. Because all of these are linear functions, they technically can all be represented by y equals mx plus b. We're going to be using slope-intercept form, this equation right here, in order to figure out what the y-intercept is. But in order to do that, we also need to figure out what the slope is. So let's start off with that. Again, to find slope, we just need to find 2 points. I'm going to choose these points right here. You could have chosen different ones, it's okay. I'm just choosing those 2 right there. Let me work this out on the side over here. So I'm looking for the slope, which is the change of y over the change of x. Okay, so let's write out our fraction. I'm going to put the subtraction symbols in there, and let's focus on the top. Change of y. Well, y is 4 and 11, so 4 minus 11. Change of x is negative 1 and 6, so negative 1 minus 6. 4 minus 11 is negative 7. Negative 1 minus 6 is also negative 7. And negative 7 divided by negative 7 is equal to 1, a positive 1. So that is our slope. And now that we know what our slope is, it's just 1, now we need to figure out what b is, our y-intercept, but we still don't know what it is. So we're actually going to fill in the rest of this equation with one of the points from the table. Because I want to focus on positives, it's just easier for me. Let's focus on the 6 and 11. I'm going to use this point to plug into this equation and solve for b, figure out what the y-intercept is. Here, our y is going to be 11 because it's on the y part of the table. So 11 is equal to 1, which was our slope or is our slope. And instead of x, we're going to plug in a 6. And then we have plus b. We are trying to solve for b. We're trying to figure out what b is equal to. But first, let's simplify. 1 times 6 is 6. We still have plus b, and all of this is still equal to 11. We can't add 6 plus b because those are not like terms. They're not the same variable. One's a number, one's a letter. I can't combine them. So instead, we're going to get b by itself. I'm going to draw this line down here, and I have a 6. I don't want that 6. I want b to be by itself. So in order to get rid of that 6, we're going to subtract 6. Whatever we do to one side, we need to do the same thing to the other side. 6 minus 6, this cancels out. We have b is equal to 11 minus 6 is 5. So here b, our y-intercept, is equal to 5. And now that we know the y-intercept, the last thing we need to do is compare them. Function a has a y-intercept of -4. Function b has a y-intercept of 5, which means that function b has a bigger y-intercept, which means that the answer here is the second option. The y-intercept of function a is less than the y-intercept of function b. Let's see if that made sense. Here is a similar type of problem. I'm going to put 30 seconds. However, you will take more time, and that's completely okay. Just press pause and then press play when you're ready to start. Your 30 seconds or more starts now. And that is time. Again, if you need more time, just press pause and press play when you're ready to start. Again, we're being asked to find the y-intercept and compare the y-intercept for both of these functions. For function a, like we said before, we are going to need y equals mx plus b. We need to figure out what the slope and the y-intercept are. So in order to figure out our answer, we also need to find the slope. Let's just start off by choosing 2 points. I'm going to choose the ones that have positive numbers just because it's going to make our problem a little easier to work with. In order to find slope, we know that is change of y over change of x, which in this case, we're going to subtract our y's and subtract our x's, just like before. Our y's are 20 and 23, so let's subtract 20 minus 23. Our x's are 7 and 8, so let's subtract 7 minus 8. 20 minus 23 is equal to -3, and 7 minus 8 is equal to -1. -3 divided by -1 is going to give us a positive 3. Again, all we found out is that our slope, our m, is 3. We still do not know what our y-intercept is, what b is, but in order to find it, we're going to take one of our coordinates, and I'm going to choose this middle one right here, and we're going to plug it into this equation. For y, we're going to put a 20, so 20 is equal to 3, which we found was our slope. Instead of x, we're going to plug in the 7, and then we have plus b, which we still don't know what that is. Here we're going to solve for b. We're going to get b by itself, but first let's go ahead and multiply. 3 times 7 is 21. We still have b. Let's go ahead and bring it down, and this is all still equal to 20. We're trying to get b by itself. We don't want that 21. Let's go ahead and subtract it. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. This cancels out. Here we're going to have an answer of b is equal to 20 minus 21 is -1. For function b, it's pretty straightforward. Our y-intercept is just -3. We don't have to do any calculations. We can just tell just by looking at it. So which one is greater? Is -1 greater than -3? Yes, it is. It's closer to the positive direction. -1, so the y-intercept of function A is greater than the y-intercept of function B. This is the last type of example that we're going to do together. As you can see, it's asking us to compare the y value of function A when x is equal to -2 and determine if it's greater or less than the y value of function B when x is equal to -2. It is going to take a little extra work, especially for this table. We're going to combine everything that we've talked about, so it is going to be a harder and longer problem. For function B, this is pretty straightforward. We know that x is equal to -2, so we're trying to figure out what y is equal to. When x is equal to -2, y for this problem is also equal to -2. This is the y value for function B when x is equal to -2. For function A, again, we can't just look at this. We want to know what happens when x is equal to -2, but it doesn't give us that on the table. We don't know what it is. So in order to find that out, we actually need to first write the equation for this table, which might take a little bit of time. But this is how we're going to do it. Like before, we know that we could write the equation of this table in the form y equals mx plus b. In order to do this, we first need to find the slope and then the y-intercept, just like we did before. Let's do some of the work over here. We know that the slope is change of y over change of x. Let's choose 2 points from our table. I'm going to choose the positive ones if I can, just because it's going to make our problem a little easier to work with. In our numerator, we're going to take our y's, so 7 and 12. 7 minus 12, and in the denominator, it's going to be 1 minus 2. Let's simplify this out. 7 minus 12 is -5. 1 minus 2 is -1. So -5 divided by -1 is equal to a positive 5. So we just found that our slope is equal to 5. Now let's figure out what our y-intercept is equal to. Like before, we need to choose a point and plug it into this equation. I'm going to choose this middle one just because it looks a little easier. For y, we're going to plug in a 7. So 7 is equal to m is going to be 5. X is going to be 1 according to our point right here. And then we don't know what b is equal to. Let's go ahead and solve for b. 5 times 1 is 5. Let's go ahead and bring down the b. And all of this is equal to 7. We're trying to get b by itself. We don't want 5 there. Let's subtract both sides by 5. We have b is equal to 2. Now that we have this, we could write our equation for this table. So we have y is equal to mx plus b. But instead of m and b, we're going to write y is equal to 5, because that was our slope that we found over here, x plus 2, which is our y-intercept that we just found over here. And now that we have that, now we could plug in what we know x is equal to. We know, according to the problem, that x is equal to -2. So now we could plug that into this equation and find out what y is equal to. So let's go back to our workspace over here. We have y is equal to 5x plus 2. Let me just get rid of this bottom. Oops. Well, it's gone now. So here we have y is equal to 5x plus 2. We know that x is going to be equal to -2, but we don't know what y is equal to. Everything else stays the same. So we have y is equal to 5 times -2 plus 2. Let's just simplify now. 5 times -2 is -10 plus 2. So we have y is equal to -10 plus 2. That means that y is equal to a -8. Pause. Technical difficulties. Let's continue. Let's go back to our options. The value of function a when x is equal to -2 is -8. And the value of function b when x is equal to -2 is -2. And that comes from here. So which is greater? Is -8 greater than -2? No. The answer is option 2. -8 is less than -2. And you made it to the end. You're done. That was a lot, I know. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I know this isn't necessarily the easiest thing, but again, it's one of the most important things that I need to make sure that you know before you move on to another grade. I will be adding your scores up to give you your final grade based on this table. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Have a good rest of your day. I'll see you all later. Take care.